And at the end, what is the most important is to do your music, to do your efforts. And all these things, all these efforts, at the end, it will bloom. And I really believe in that because from my experiences, because you never know who is listening to you, even in a rehearsal, even in tiny concert halls, you never know.
Yeah. Ryutaro, it's so lovely to talk to you.
Thank you very much. Same to me for me.
So tell me, you're a pianist?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And where are you based at the moment?
Now I'm in Paris, and I'm based in Paris.
You're based in Paris, okay.
Yeah.
How did you start in music? What was the first steps you took to play the piano?
Okay, well, I'm Japanese, so I was born there with non-musician parents. But they both liked very much listening to the classical music. And especially in Japan, there was every Sunday, there was a TV show with the National Orchestra in Japan. And they watched it every Sunday. And as a kid, as a baby, I liked watching it. I liked them. Yeah. And I just simply found the music. I mean, I liked the music, but especially I simply found the violinists very cool. And actually, I wanted to start to play the violin.
Really?
But, yeah, but the thing is,
But what was it about? What was it about the violin that you liked?
Well, actually, that was just visual and everything. You know, it's the TV, so of course there is the visual side and also the music, the sound. And as a kid, I naturally liked the music and also visually the musicians. And I want to play the violin, but you know, my parents they didn't know any violin player on their round, so they just decided to send me to a piano student. Okay. So who was my very first teacher. Yeah.
And but this is so interesting that you say that your parents were not musicians, though they love music, and I hear that sometimes, you know, from musicians, that they say, my parents, you know, they didn't play any instruments, but it was their love for music that actually created, you know, like in your case, it created your love for the music.
Yeah, we can say like that. Although they didn't force me to play or anything, but their love to the music just came into me naturally. Yeah. You know, and yeah, not only talking about the violin, but in music in general. I mean, the classical music in general, because I play the piano. Like when I was a kid, there's a small audio cassette, you know. Yeah. Not the CD, not the LP, but the cassette.
The cassette.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had it at home in my tiny room, and without being able to read all the stop, start, all these things, because I was a baby, but I could somehow launch the cassette. And I had 3 my favorite cassettes, and they were all like symphonies or like piano music, or you know. So
amazing.
Yeah, that came all natural. Yeah.
Now, when you first started playing the piano, and when was the time where you really thought this was something that you would do as a profession?
Well, that was quite recent, actually. It's after I came to Paris. Well, let's say it's around my 3rd year, because before that I was in Japan. I was in high school like other kids, and I was not in the conservatory in Japan. So
really?
Yeah, well, I was following the lessons with private teachers, but I was not in a conservatory or the musical high school, and so my friends, they were not really, I mean, they were not in music at all. So somehow difficult to think about the musicians as a profession. And but I liked the music, so I tried to enter the Conservatory Paris, and it went well. And I came here, and the 3 years, I think, is a time to get quite used to the life here, and also to know what it is to be a musician. And in like the 3rd year, I remember I started to think that creating the music, I mean, how to interpret, was something very interesting for me. Like in the, of course, it was already interesting, but in what I want to say is like, I finally could say that this is my job. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was 2011, 12, something like that. Yeah.
But now in comparison, because if you went to the conservatory and there were other musicians or other pianists, and you said you come from just a normal school, did you feel it was it difficult for you? Did you feel that you had a lot to catch up, because some of them might have come from other music schools, for example?
Yes, I can't say that there wasn't. It's true that I had to catch up with them, but fortunately at the Conservatory Paris, there are I don't know the other conservatories in other countries, but in Paris they have so many classes, like for the not only the piano lessons. So there I could learn everything that I needed. So of course it was not easy at the beginning, but at the end of so then it's like 2-3 years, and then everything came together, and probably that's why I could think that was my profession.
Yeah. And what I also realized in the time that I spoke to artists was that this is one part of what you're doing is the music, but then there's another part, and that's the part to promote yourself or to get yourself, to do concerts and to get yourself out there. Is that something that you are now, especially after the pandemic, is it something that you really have to consider, and that you have to find ways to do it, or is it something that comes easy to you?
Well, it's not something easy, because this is not something that we learn at schools, and some people, they are lucky, some people they are not, and some people they notice that it's important to promote oneself earlier, and others not. Me, I have to say that I noticed it quite lately. But how to say, I think at the end it's it's also important to know other artists, and other artists talk about you, and other organizers talk about you, and at the end, what is the most important is to do your music, to do your efforts, and all these things, all these efforts, at the end it will bloom. And I really believe in that, because from my experiences, because you never know who is listening to you, even in a rehearsal, even in tiny concert halls, you never know. So probably in this case, I have to say that I was lucky in some point, and maybe I was not in some other points. But this is the life of the musician, I think, and then especially for the pandemic, there was this new wave of using all the SNS, all the video, like this became much more important than before. And I think every musician is now aware of the importance of using how to promote, using the videos, etc. And so I think I can't say that it's easy or something, but at the end of your efforts, I would say some part it comes naturally, and the other part you have to do it by yourself. Yeah. So it's not a nice answer, but I think that's a reality.
and I think it's also this time of the pandemic has taught everybody in all walks of life something, and that's in a sense, I think for musicians and for young musicians like yourself, I think it's such a golden opportunity to start something and to do something new and to think of it in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. For example, because even artistically speaking, during this pandemic, I somehow could get step back, to see my art in itself from distance and with time, because I had, like everybody, I had just time especially during the first lockdown, and it's true that changed me a lot in many ways.
And tell me, what would be now advice that you would give for a young pianist in Japan?
In Japan?
Yeah. Because you come from Japan, do you think there's a young pianist in Japan maybe who wants to pursue music, or anywhere in the world? What would you say to a young a young student who really is working towards achieving this dream?
I think to the students, I can say that they really have to do the best of what they can do for the moment. And that seems probably, that sounds just too much like teacher-like, but that's true. I mean, you really need to do what you can do at the moment, and the results come later. Because especially being a musician is not something that we can see the result like athletes, for example. Even in the preparation, I see the similitude quite a lot with the athletes. But the difference is we can't see the points. It's not like, yes, I ran faster than him. It's not like we marked more goals. So everything is related to yourself. But also everything can be compared. But very, there's so many in this different, so at the end, it's yourself who decides. So do the efforts.
That's the one. I would say it's like, on the one side, it's the positive that it's it can be a negative that it's not like an athlete where you run against the time or so. So it can be a negative, but it can also be a great positive to say that every person is unique and every musician brings something unique to the art.
Because otherwise, especially when you're a classical musician, mostly what we play, the pieces are like played by so many other pianists.
Yeah.
And because the score is the same. But what we see the difference is how you play, how you interpret. And that's the difference. And that really depends on your life, your vision towards the music, towards the composer, or, and that depends of many things, personal things. Yeah.
And that makes it so wonderful, really. So you can see that you listen to the same piece, but with different musicians.
Exactly.
And then you get a different experience.
Yes.
Yes, I also believe that the energy that the musician has in the music, that is also something that the audience can sense and feel. So that's great. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have more choices.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I really think is, even though there are so many possibility to listen to the others online, it still is very important, and it's different to listen to a live music in a concert hall, and that also makes us easier to have more options. I mean, to have more pianists or other musicians.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. But now, tell me, who is your favorite composer to play?
Well, that's a difficult question.
Yeah.
Because well, that really depends. Actually, that depends on the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, and for example, lately I was playing a lot of Beethoven, and this year I will play a lot of Rachmaninoff, and all this because when you think about the program, and also this year I play quite a lot of French music, but actually all this comes from the idea of programs that I will give in next ones. And then actually for me, it's very interesting the moment that I compose the program of a concert, because it's like imagining how it will sound, how I can do, and how I can combine one piece to another. And that's a very interesting process. And then once you start preparing the program, of course, you will have a lot of new discoveries, even though there are pieces that I've already played before, there's always new discoveries. And so at that moment, let's say for that year, naturally I like playing those programs. Because the more I know, the more I like. Of course, there are difficulties also, but then that's also a part of music, enjoying the music. And because you can overcome all these difficulties, and when you overcome it turns out to be a joy. And so that really depends on
and I can really understand that, because I also I studied interior design, and every time I learned something about a new designer, I sort of like that style, because then you understand it much better.
Exactly.
And you
go deeper. And...
Yeah. But do you think it also changes with age, that when you were younger, that you interpreted also the music differently than now?
The way yes, definitely.
Really?
Because one is because you have more technical informations, but also, of course, you develop yourself as a human being. You have more life experiences, which counts quite a lot on the interpretation. Yeah.
Now, tell me, what is your wish for the future?
Well, my wish for the future is to continue playing, continue giving the concerts, and live a happy life. That
Yeah.
means, that means with music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I have to ask you, is there a place nearby where you go and wind down and have a coffee, or is there a restaurant in your area where you that you visit regularly, that you enjoy the food? What do you usually eat when you go out?
Well, when I go out, well, actually, that's something that changed me because of pandemic.
Really?
Because really, before pandemic, there was one restaurant which is right in front of my home, where I've been going quite often, very often, or even just to take coffee. But because of the pandemic, the restaurants were closed, and then I learned how to cook, and so now I really like cooking quite well.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What do you cook normally?
Well, normally I cook French dishes, but especially with sauce.
Yeah.
Because making sauce is such a difficult way. It takes time. But I really like to make sauce béarnaise, sauce hollandaise, and but so afterwards, going to restaurants, for me, it changed me. I mean, I don't like to go to a particular restaurant now. If I go to a restaurant, I would like to go somewhere which makes foods that I really cannot make,
Oh, yeah.
So so every time I try to change, I try to find something better and different, like artists, because cooking is also, for me, it's an art. So
exactly. And I did a series of moments in lockdown where I spoke to artists who were in lockdown, and so many told me that they started cooking and baking during lockdown.
Yes.
Yeah. And that made me also realize that it's a way of creating, and food is really, food is a form of art, cooking is a form of art. So I think this is what changed a lot. I think a lot of people started more, experimenting with food and staying at home and so on. So
and when you're at home, once you know how to cook, at the end you can improvise. It's because when you want to cook, following the recipe, that takes quite a lot of time. But when you don't have time, well, you just improvise, and always you find something new.
Well, there's a orchestra, the Windsor Symphony Orchestra. They've got a concert series now where they do it in two parts. The one, they have a chef that demonstrates a dish that is connected with the music that's being played. So they've researched the history of that time period, what people the dishes that were there, and then this chef he's got background in the history of cooking and so on, and then he demonstrates this dish, and then afterwards you can you cook first, and then while you eat you can watch the concert. So maybe that's something
that's wonderful.
that's a great idea to to do an online concert. So but anyway, but it was so lovely to talk to you.
The same.
I really wish you all the best, and
thank you very much.
Whenever you come to Vienna, I hope to see you in concert. And please let me know when you come, and maybe we can go for a coffee.
Yeah, definitely. I'll let you know.
Yeah. So, do you do a lot of touring?
Well, actually, I just came back from Japan. Of course, I was there for the New Year, but also I gave several concerts. And next week I play in Paris, and then afterwards I go to south, not south, but in middle of France.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
when
a
you were
little bit.
when you were in Japan, did your parents come to watch?
Yes, to one of them. Yeah.
Okay, so
One of my
they're
concerts. Yes.
very proud of you.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Well, Ryutaro, it was so lovely to talk to you, and I wish you a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you very much. You too.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.